So this all happened when my family went out to Laramie for my graduation from law school. My parents, Miles, and I drove the 2 days to Laramie because I had to move all the stuff out of my apartment and back to Chicago. Because my mom had traded her minivan for a Volkswagen Beetle, we had to rent a van for the trek. Now, because my grandma's 85 and my brother never leaves his room, and, because they would have taken up valuable storage space in the van, they flew out separately. I had arranged for my family to meet my favorite professor for dinner at the Italian restaurant in Laramie. That's how things work in Laramie. There's the Italian restaurant, the Thai restaurant, the sushi place, and let's face it, you're lucky that they even exist. Now, as you might imagine, there being only the Italian restaurant, they don't exactly have an overabundance of seating, and we had to reserve a special table because there were 6 of us. Because the professor is in a wheelchair, we had to be seated in the front section of the restaurant by the front door. So, this entire time the rest of the story is happening, I am stuck sitting right where everybody can see me. So, we were scheduled to meet at 6 the evening my brother and grandma flew into Cheyenne. Their plane was scheduled to get in at 4:30, and since it only takes about half an hour to get from Cheyenne to Laramie, that should have been plenty of time. Airlines being what they are, those were famous last words. When I got to the restaurant at about 5 minutes to 6, I got a text from my mom saying that they had gotten my grandma and brother and were just leaving Cheyenne. Now, for those of you lucky enough not to know about Wyoming, it is a box that is 100% as entertaining as this visual. I-80, which is where Laramie and Cheyenne are, runs across the south, and as you might imagine from a state with a total population of 500,000, there's not a whole lot along the highway, or anywhere for that matter. Now, because my dad wasn't paying all that much attention to things, he claimed it's because the van was rented and he didn't know where to look. I say it's because he wasn't paying that much attention to things. He didn't notice that the van was almost out of gas until the gas light went on just as the van passed the last exit on I-80 for Cheyenne. Now, once you leave Cheyenne and before you get to Laramie, there is only one place to get gas. Buford, the town with the population of 1. So rather than getting off at the next exit, turning around, going back to Cheyenne, my dad decided they'd just keep going to Buford and get gas there. Under ordinary circumstances, that's a perfectly fine plan. However, unbeknownst to my dad, but completely beknownst to me, whose cell number he had, my friend, whose cell number he also had, and everyone else living in Cheyenne or Laramie, whose cell phone numbers, in my dad's defense, he probably didn't have, Buford was closed. That's what happens with a whopping population of 1. The whole fucking town was closed. The one person had decided to retire and a replacement had yet to be found. So when my dad pulled off at Buford, he was unpleasantly surprised and decided to turn around and drive back to Cheyenne. Unfortunately for my dad and for me, sitting alone in the restaurant right by the front door, Buford's closer was not the only fact unbeknownst to my dad. He was also completely unaware of the fact that Buford is closer to Laramie than it is to Cheyenne. At least 10 miles closer to Laramie than Cheyenne. And despite the fact that 4 people could have used cell phones to call me and ask, 3 smartphones could have consulted Google Maps and found out, and 2 cell phones could have called my native Wyoming friend and asked, my dad, in his infinite wisdom, decided to decree geography. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about any of this until my dad had already committed to driving back to Cheyenne. That was when my brother texted me saying that they had run out of gas and were going back to Cheyenne. Dude, what the fuck? Buford is closer to Laramie. Lols, I'll tell Dad. This revelation was apparently hilarious to my mom and dad, who started laughing. My grandmother, on the other hand, sat stewing in the back. "This isn't funny!" was her mantra the rest of the ride, and she didn't forgive my dad the whole trip, which just made the entire fiasco a complete success in his mind. In the end, they got to the restaurant an hour late and 5 minutes before the professor.